Welcome, everyone. I know we are waiting for Ms. Hersman. Oh. I know we had dueling hearings, so everyone who was at the Capitol Visitor Center has to trudge back here. We'll give people a few minutes, but I would like to try to, I know some witnesses have a time constraint, so at the first opportunity we will begin testimony. I'm also expecting, if this were not bad enough, that we're expecting votes fairly soon, but I'd like to get through some of the testimony before that happens. Thank you for bearing with us. Good afternoon, everyone. Because of the crazy schedule here, I'd like to call this hearing to order. The Subcommittee on the Federal Workforce, Postal Service, and the District of Columbia's hearing will now come to order. I'd like to welcome those members in attendance. I know that Mr. Chaffetz was just with us at the earlier hearing, so he's in transit right now. And I'd like to thank all of our witnesses and those in attendance this afternoon. The purpose of today's hearing is to explore the steps the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority has taken to address the safety findings and recommendations contained in the recent National Transportation Board's issued Railroad Accident Report on June 22nd, 2009 Metro Rail collision. The Chair, the Ranking Member, and the subcommittee members will each have 5 minutes to make an opening statement, and all members will have 3 days to submit statements for the record. Hearing no objections, so ordered. As stated earlier today, hearing has been called in order for the subcommittee to once again receive an update on the steps the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority is taking to ensure that the Metro Rail, bus, and paratransit services are operating at the highest possible levels of safety and reliability. Today's hearing, which marks the 3rd subcommittee hearing held on the Washington Metro in the 111th Congress, will also entail a full discussion on the findings and recommendations contained in the National Transportation Safety Board's recently issued Railroad Accident Report on the June 22, 2009 Red Line collision and the Washington Metro's efforts to address the NTSB's conclusions in that report. The Washington Metro Area Transit Authority is the National Capital Area primary public transportation agency and provides service to a population of over 3.5 million people within a 1,500 square mile area. Considering the estimated 40% of the federal employees who utilize the Washington Metro on a daily basis and the hundreds of thousands of D.C. area residents and tourists who rely on the system to navigate the nation's capital, it is critical that America's transit system, so-called, be at the highest level of dependability and safety. Since the June 22, 2009 Red Line collision, which left 9 people dead and 76 injured, serious questions have been raised by the Federal Transit Administration the Tri-State Oversight Committee, and most recently the National Transportation Safety Board regarding deficiencies in the Washington Metro's safety culture. Notably, the National Transportation Safety Board concludes that shortcomings in the Washington Metro's internal communications, in its recognition of hazards, its assessment of risk from those hazards, and its implementation of corrective actions are all evidence of an ineffective safety culture within the organization, close quote. In light of these concerns, I'm particularly interested in hearing about the specific actions that the Washington Metro has pursued over the last several months to elevate and improve the organization's safety record and performance. I also look forward to discussing ongoing efforts to strengthen and empower the Tri-State Oversight Committee, which serves as the Washington Metro's state safety oversight agency in accordance with FTA regulations. I understand that the Washington Metro is currently navigating a complex transition period, and while today's hearing is aimed at addressing the transit system's safety and reliability challenges, we cannot ignore Washington Metro's financial challenges, which, whether we like it or not, impact the organization's ability to achieve certain standards of safety. Additionally, I'd like to note that the federal government has a role to play in promoting the safety and service of the Washington Metro, and I welcome the opportunity to hear more about what we here in Congress can do to help the Washington Metro at this time. Again, I'd like to thank each of you for your willingness to be with us and to help the committee with its work, and I look forward to your participation in today's important hearing. I will now yield, in light of my colleague and friend Mr. Schaefer's absence, I will now recognize, and it is understandable, we were in two competing hearings. I ran a little faster than he did to get over here. He will be along directly. He's very diligent about that. I'd like to recognize Ms. Eleanor Holmes Norton, Congresswoman from the District of Columbia, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you above all as we come to the end of this session for the way you have thrust this subcommittee in the leadership on Metro matters. You indicated we've had 3 hearings. We even had a hearing before the collision. But, Mr. Chairman, you have taken the leadership in making sure that there was direct and timely and constant oversight from the Congress. And I particularly appreciate that you're holding this hearing on the NTSB recommendations before Congress adjourns so that work can begin on them beyond what I'm sure is already taking place. I want to emphasize again, Mr. Chairman, that beyond the interest, the obvious interest of members of the committee who are from this region, there is a strong federal interest in what happens to Metro, since the plurality, indeed almost half of its riders on weekdays are federal employees, which is why we subsidize them to get to work. Anyone who doubts that need only think of the snowstorms of the past winter, when it became clear that if Metro shuts down, so must the government shut down. So we have an interest in Metro beyond even the private sector here, and particularly in the fact that it has for decades been plagued by a series of safety issues. The NTSB, of course, has been on top of these issues throughout, and this subcommittee has been at pains to see that others with oversight are also as diligent. Mr. Chairman, the most disturbing part of what we've known from briefings from the NTSB is that this tragedy was preventable. There was no signal that there was a train on the track, and yet there were systems in the hands of Metro which could have indeed been in use. That has led the subcommittee to focus on safety, and the NTSB's recommendations on safety culture is the recommendation that, at least in my view, has at least has focused most of my attention. I hope this won't be seen as a reflection on the workers, because as I questioned Ms. Hersman and others at NTSB, I learned that NTSB was almost alone in not having a non-punitive safety culture. Apparently, other common carriers understand that the safety culture has to be non-punitive, so that if you report, that report won't result in punishment. Why would anybody report then against their own personal interest? Yet it appears that that is the way in which Metro has operated. That's not the way in which, according to NTSB, trains operate. That's not how our airlines operate, and they've long had non-punitive cultures. And I'm sure if we had such a culture at Metro, much of the rest would take care of itself. Mr. Chairman, I note that even as we are in session, here in the subcommittee, the NTSB Reauthorization Act is going to be on the floor today, and I'm pleased to note that. I have a section of that bill that's far less important than the reauthorization itself, but it would clarify that NTSB can make interim safety recommendations. NTSB was on point in making all the recommendations that should have been followed. At the same time, we can hardly blame Metro, which only got the first $150 million this year. It's going to get another $150 million for not having replaced the trains and the tracks and the rest. Although I do believe the track matter did not require that the overhaul of the system that we now know must take place, and Metro is certainly to be held accountable for that. Regret that only after the tragedy did the first $150 million come, but now they seem to be coming in regular order, and I will be very, very interested to hear what progress Metro has made on these recommendations, most of which they were aware of simply by virtue of the trauma they've gone through, even before the NTSB has given them a virtual track record to follow. And if they go down that list, do what the NTSB says, I think all of us will feel safer. Thank you very much again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I am going to fully recognize my Republican colleagues when they do arrive, but in the interest of time, what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'd like to ask all of our members, it's the custom before this committee that anyone who is offering testimony must be sworn. So may I please ask you to rise? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this subcommittee is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, let the record show that each of the witnesses has answered in the affirmative. I know that a few of you have been here before this committee, and you understand the lighting system we have here. That little box at the middle of the table will flash green when you're to begin your testimony, and then after it turns yellow, you're to wrap up your testimony, and then the red light indicates that your time has expired. What I'd like to do is to first offer some brief introductions of our panelists. First of all, Deborah A.P. Hersman was sworn in as the 12th chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board on July 28, 2009, following her nomination to the post by President Barack Obama and confirmation by the United States Senate. Chairman Hersman is also serving a second five-year term as a board member on the National Transportation Safety Board. While I think initially we had a conflict for time, I think we've resolved that, and which is important. And I appreciate your diligence in being here and the important role that you've played, not only in identifying the causes of this accident, but also in the recommendations that you have made to make necessary corrections. So I'm very happy that you'll be able to join us for the full hearing. Ms. Catherine Hudgens is the first Vice Chairman of the Washington Metro Area Transit Authority Board of Directors. Ms. Hudgens joined the Metro Board in January 2004 as an alternate director. She was appointed as Principal Director in 2008, representing Fairfax County, Virginia. Ms. Hudgens also was elected to the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors in November 1999 and is currently serving her third term. Richard Sarles, am I pronouncing that correct? Richard Sarles was appointed interim general manager of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority by the Metro Board of Directors effective April 3, 2010. Notably, Mr. Sarles has more than 40 years of experience in the transit industry with New Jersey Transit, Amtrak, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. He most recently retired from the New Jersey Transit, where he served as executive director. Matthew Bassett serves as chairman of the Tri-State Oversight Committee, the joint organization that oversees Metro Rail safety and security programs. Mr. Bassett works for the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and prior to joining the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, he worked for the Maryland Department of Transportation's Rail Safety Oversight Programs. Anthony W. Garland is the recording secretary for the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. Mr. Garland, originally a Metro bus operator, has more than 25 years' experience with Local 689. Prior to being elected a recording secretary, Mr. Garland served as a shop steward, executive board member, and assistant business agent of Local 689. Welcome, Mr. Garland. Francis DiBernardo is the chair of the Riders Advisory Council for the Washington Metro Area Transit Authority, which provides the Washington Metro Board with the riders' perspective on issues affecting Metro Bus, Metro Rail, and Metro Access. And Mr. DiBernardo is also the executive director of the New Ways Ministry located in Mount Rainier, Maryland. Welcome all. What I would like to do then is to ask Ms. Hersman if you'd like to begin by offering your opening statement for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Lynch, Delegate Norton, members of the committee. The Safety Board is pleased to return to brief you on the findings and the recommendations from our report on the June 22, 2009 collision that occurred near Fort Totten. It resulted in 9 fatalities and 52 injuries. About a month after the accident, well, actually a couple weeks, July 13th, we issued 2 early recommendations. We testified before your committee the day after that, on July 14th. On September 22nd, we issued 9 additional recommendations. We held a public hearing on February 23rd through 25th. We held our board meeting where we adopted the final report and 23 more recommendations on July 27th, 2010. And on August 9th, our board, the 5 members of the National Transportation Safety Board, met with the Metro Board, all the members of their board, to discuss our findings. We determined the probable cause of the accident was the failure of the track circuit modules to cause the automatic train control system to lose detection of the train, and thus transmit speed commands to the trailing train up to the point of impact. WMATA's failure to ensure that enhanced track circuit verification test was institutionalized and used system-wide, which would have identified the faulty track circuit before the accident. The lack of a safety culture within WMATA. WMATA's failure to maintain and monitor the performance of its automatic train control system. GRS and Alstom Signal Incorporated's failure to provide a maintenance plan to detect spurious signals that could cause its track modules to malfunction. Ineffective oversight by the Metro Board. TOC's ineffective oversight and lack of oversight authority. And FTA's lack of statutory authority. With your permission, I'd like to show a short animation of the accident sequence for the committee. The motion of the struck train, train number 214, was derived from data retrieved from event recorders. The striking train number 112 did not have event recorders. Consequently, its motion is derived by simulation of speed commands that were transmitted from the train control system and the train performance characteristics. The animation is going to show 2 views of the train in real time. The top of the screen shows an overhead view of both trains as they travel inbound on the red line. The striking train is indicated by the blue arrow, and the struck train 214 is shown by the orange arrow. The yellow dots on the track delineate each segment of the track, each circuit. WMATA's automatic train control system is designed to issue speed commands to trains to ensure that at least one unoccupied track